Welcome back to my YouTube channel, where we're once again talking about the top 50 greatest Western films of all time. And this week, we're going to be talking about numbers 41 through 45. So let's get started. Number 41 is a film from 1957 called 3:10 to Yuma. No, this is not the one that was done a few years ago with Russell Crowe and Christian Bale in it. I thought that film was okay, but I thought it was a lesser film than this one. This film was directed by Delmar Daves. It starred Van Heflin as Dan Evans. It starred Glenn Ford as Ben Wade. And strangely enough, this film also had Richard Jekyll in it, who plays Charlie Prince. This film is a really good film. If you've only seen the most recent 3:10 to Yuma that had Russell Crowe and Christian Bale in it, I think you're missing something by not seeing this film that has Glenn Ford, because I believe this is a much better film and probably not as negative as that other the current one. And I know this will upset some of you that haven't seen the old one, but I believe it's a much better film. I believe it's a lot more wholesome, to be honest with you. Stagecoach robber and murderer Ben Wade is caught at the Bisbee Saloon. The Butterfield stage owner gives offers to pay $200 to anybody that is willing to take Ben Wade to Contention City, where he can catch the 3:10 train to Yuma. And that's how this film starts. Ben Wade tries to get Ben Wade, played by Glenn Ford, who's magnificent in this part. Glenn Ford is one of the great actors of all time, and I don't think he gets near enough credit for just how great an actor he really was. But Ben Wade tries to get Dan Evans to let him go. He also tries to buy him off. He tries to scare him. He does everything he can in this film to get Dan Evans to let him go, and so he don't have to go to Yuma prison. But Dan Evans is determined, and Van Heflin in this role is very good, and he just refuses to give in to him. Van Heflin, of course, we talked about him before. He was also in the film Shane, and so he's just a great actor. Not as well known as most actors are, but he was really superb in this film. But 3:10 Yuma, that's my number 41 for this week. It's a great film. If you've never seen it, and you've only seen the most recent 3:10 to Yuma, I urge you to go back and look this one up, because it's an excellent film. It deserves your attention, and I hope you'll check it out. Coming in at number 42 this week, and it's a more modern film. It's a film called Hidalgo from 2004. It was directed by Joe Johnston. This film stars Viggo Mortensen as Frank Hopkins, and it stars Omar Sharif as Sheikh Rayad, I believe is how you pronounce it. Frank Hopkins is a famous long-range Western writer, made famous by the Buffalo Bill Wild West show. And for those of you, and I'll just take this moment to tell you about, if you're not familiar with the Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, much of what the world thinks of America was created by Buffalo Bill. In a sense, Buffalo Bill was our first superstar. He traveled clear around the world. He was known by everybody, and much of what Europe and eventually America the East came to believe about the Wild West was created from Buffalo Bill and this Wild West show. And it's just a fascinating part of history, and you ought to look it up sometime if you really want to really learn something. But Buffalo Bill was like Michael Jordan. He was like Denzel Washington. Everybody knew him. And anyway, Hidalgo is the story of legendary writer Frank Hopkins, who rode for Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. And he takes his Mustang, and they go overseas. and they enter a brutal 3,000-mile race across the Arabian desert. The race is called the Ocean of Fire. And this race is legendary and at the time. And bringing an American here is he just basically scoffed at, thinking his American Mustang isn't strong enough like these Arabian horses to hold up in this race across the desert. And it's just a super film. There's surprises. There's things that astound you. It's different to have a Western that takes place in the Arabian desert, but this is one fantastic Western. Viggo Mortensen is great in this, and actually I had the chance to meet Viggo Mortensen at last year's Western Writers convention in Amarillo. Viggo is a nice guy, quiet, doesn't talk much, but he's just a nice guy. He was friendly. He stopped in at Roundup night, where at the end of the day in the Western Writers Convention, we have what we call the Roundup room, where a lot of the guys sit there with their guitars and play music and sing. And Viggo Mortensen actually stopped in a little while and sang along, and he's just a good guy, and I was really impressed with him. But Viggo Mortensen is great in this film. Hidalgo it's definitely something you ought to see. If you haven't seen it, it's not your traditional Western, but it is a fine one, and it's well worth your time. And I hope you'll stop and check it out, because I believe that's a Western that you'll really enjoy, and I hope you'll look it up if you haven't already seen it. And if you have, it's good to watch it again, because I'm thinking about doing that myself. Coming in at 43, we have a film from 1970 called Chisholm, directed by Andrew McLaughlin, who is a good friend of John Wayne's. Chisholm is just a great film. Just about everybody is in this film. Trust me. John Wayne, he plays John Chisholm. Forrest Tucker's playing Lawrence Murphy. Ben Johnson's in this playing a guy named James Pepper. And his role, and we've mentioned Ben Johnson so many times in these top 50 Westerns. He's in so many of them. But he plays a guy named Pepper he's always grumbling and mumbling about something. John Wayne's always asking him, "What'd you say?" And he's just great in this role. And he's somebody that's known John Chisholm, John Wayne's characters, since they first started building this ranch. And it's just a great film. There's so many people here. Glenn Corbett, Andrew Prine, Christopher George, Linda Day George, his wife, Bruce Cabot, Richard Jekyll again, he's also in this one, and Jeffrey Deuel. And for just a moment here, you're going to have to excuse me, because I'm going to chase a rabbit here. Those of you not familiar with Jeffrey Deuel, he played Billy the Kid in this film, and he was excellent in it. But Jeffrey Deuel has a pretty good Western pedigree, and Jeffrey Deuel's brother was named Pete Deuel. If that name doesn't ring a bell to you, some of you older people will remember a Western series that ran about 3 seasons called Alias Smith and Jones. It was one of my favorite Westerns on television when I was a child. Ben Johnson and Pete Deuel played Hannibal Hayes and Kid Curry. And Hannibal Hayes was Pete Deuel's character. And he's always smiling. He's always got a scam he's running. And he was just excellent at it. Well, Pete Deuel evidently had some mental difficulties in his life. And Pete Deuel, right in the midst of his greatest stardom, he took a gun and blew his head off. And right in the middle, Alias Smith and Jones, and they tried to replace him with a man named Roger Davis, who actually was a narrator for that series, but it didn't even, I don't even think it lasted a whole season. Nobody could step into it. And that's where the connection I wanted to make is. Pete Deuel's brother was Jeffrey Deuel, who played Billy the Kid in Chisholm. And had the people that made Alias Smith and Jones turned around and got Jeffrey Deuel to play Pete Deuel's role on this as Hannibal Hayes, this series would continue, because Jeffrey Deuel looked a whole lot like Pete Deuel. They had the same impish smile, the same mischievous face that looked like it was up to some scam or just come from one. And I'll tell you what, had they got Jeffrey Deuel, who played Billy the Kid in this film, to play an Alias Smith and Jones, that thing might have continued for another 2 or 3 seasons and could have survived the passing of Pete Deuel. But anyway, that was a rabbit I wanted to chase for just a little bit. But back to Chisholm real quick, number 43 on my list. Chisholm is pretty much, Chisholm just another telling of the Lincoln County War, which involves the story of Billy the Kid. And there's been probably dozens of these tell the story of Billy the Kid over and over again. You've seen Young Guns 1 and 2. That talked about the story of Billy the Kid in the Lincoln County War. And Chisholm is just an excellent film about it. One of the great things about this film I like, and it's exceptional, this film has a great musical score attached to it. And the narration during this musical score is by Robert Conrad, who has one of the greatest voices there ever was. Fact is, some of you will know this, back in the old days where people listened to Westerns on the radio, and Lone Ranger, Robert Conrad was the voice of the Lone Ranger back then. But he just had a great voice, and this musical score in this film is exceptional. And the film's just worth watching just to hear the music. And then along with it, it also featured music by a very young country singer named Merle Haggard. And he sings in this too. And it just, I don't know that Merle Haggard ever sang anywhere else that I can think of. And it just, there's so much about this film that's worth watching. It's just full of great stars, and Ben Johnson is just excellent in this. John Wayne is superb. There's humor, there's drama, there's loss, and just so much here that makes this story great. I mean, everything about the Lincoln County War is just fascinating, and Billy the Kid, his rise and his fall, and it's just so much, just a great story, and well worth your time. And Chisholm, with John Wayne, does a good a job of telling this story as anybody, and it's well worth the time you'd sit in front of that screen. You'll thank me if you haven't ever seen it. Coming in at number 44 is a film from 1965 called Shenandoah. This film, like the last one, was also directed by, who directed Chisholm. The same director was on this one too, Andrew McLaughlin, who is a good friend of John Wayne. But this film stars Jimmy Stewart. Jimmy Stewart is a patriarch of a large Virginia farming family. He plays a man named Charles Anderson. He has his son is Doug. One of his sons is Doug McClure, who played Trampas in The Virginian. For you older people that remember it, Glenn Corbett's in this, as he was in Chisholm, and he plays Jacob Anderson. Patrick Wayne, John Wayne's old son, plays James Anderson. This film has a tremendous amount of stars and stars in and future stars. Catherine Ross was in this, Paul Fix, Denver Pyle. If you're not familiar with the name of Denver Pyle, he's the one who played Uncle Jesse in the Dukes of Hazzard. And George Kennedy's in it, James Best. Strangely enough, James Best is the one that played Roscoe P. Coltrane. What, Roscoe P. Coltrane? And the Dukes of Hazzard. And two of the stars of that film, of that series, TV series, are here in this film. It had Harry Carey Jr., had Strother Martin. This film was just loaded with good actors and good acting. And it's just an exceptional film. Jimmy Stewart's character, Charlie Anderson, is a father in Virginia, he has a big farm. His kids help out, his sons help. He's determined to keep his family neutral during the Civil War. The Civil War is taking place all around their farm, but Charles Anderson, Jimmy Stewart's character, is determined that he will not allow his sons to get involved in it. And so they're going to be neutral. They aren't going to support the North. They're not going to support the South. And as long as the war doesn't come to him, he plans to stay out of it. It's a tough call, and it's not going in that a war can be raging all around you, and you can live in the midst of it and be untouched. you're pretty sure that that can't happen. But that's kind of how this film starts out. And Charlie Anderson, he claims to be a God-fearing man, but doesn't give God credit for much of anything. After taking his wife Martha, he's kind of bitter at God, and you can see it in the prayers, and he really don't thank God too much for any of his blessings. He pretty well puts that on his own back. But Jimmy Stewart is crusty, he's determined, he's honorable, he's funny, he's sarcastic, and he's just superb in this role. Jimmy Stewart, I've said it before, one of the greatest actors of his generation. Nobody could play I don't think there was a better actor out there than Jimmy Stewart. You believed him in just about everything he was in. And Jimmy Stewart was just fantastic in Shenandoah. It's just a great film. And Shenandoah is my number 44. If you haven't ever seen this film, and I'm guessing that a whole lot of you have never watched Shenandoah. And if you haven't, you really need to rent it, stream it, find it somewhere, and watch this film, because it's well worth your time. It's a beautiful film. The cinematography is just exceptional. The war scenes are believable, and Charlie Anderson and his family tries to remain untouched in the midst of a war and uncommitted, and that doesn't happen. And I won't tell you how the war comes to him, but it's a case of mistaken identity, and involves one of his sons, and Charlie Anderson will charge hell to get his son back, and you see it in this film, and he actually experiences it. And just Shenandoah, number 44. It's a great film, and it's just well worth your time. Check it out. You'll thank me if you do. 45 is a film from 1985, and I've mentioned it before on here, and that's Pale Rider. It's directed by Clint Eastwood. Of course, it stars Clint Eastwood. He plays a preacher, and they don't ever give his name. Michael Moriarty plays Hall Barrett. Richard Dysart plays Coy LaHood. Chris Penn is Josh LaHood. Sidney Penny's I'm having a heck of a time talking today. Sidney Penny's in this. Carrie Snodgrass, Richard Kyle, and John Russell plays Marshall Stockburn. This film is about a wealthy industrialist who's stripping, basically doing hydraulic pressure washing of the mountainsides, washing them away and getting the gold and ore that comes out of them. Meanwhile, while he's doing this on an industrial, large level scale, a bunch of poor miners come into the area, and they set up a mining camp down there, and they're working the streams and searching for gold. There's a bunch of poor mining families, and Stockburn, who wants the land. He don't want anybody coming in there and taking any of his gold, and he does everything he can to run them out of there. And along the way, a mysterious rider shows up wearing a pale horse. A mysterious man is a preacher, and he's riding a white horse, which is a pale horse. The title's kind of a reference to death, and it talks about in the scriptures what's often called the four riders of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And so when he comes in riding a pale horse, in Death Road with him, and that's pretty much the way this film starts out. And it actually, and I talked about it before when I talked about the film Shane, but this film was some people say a copy of it. I would say it's one man's version of it. I'd say Clint Eastwood did a super job of taking the story of Shane and making it his own, and changing it in his own way, and making it a great story and a great Western. Another one of the things that makes this Western so special, and another reason why I put it in my top 50 Westerns of all time, is because it was 1985. And right during that time, the Western was nearly dead. Nobody wanted to make Westerns. Nobody was making Western films. It wasn't thought to be successful. It wasn't thought to make any money. Clint Eastwood took a chance right here and went out and made this Western. And it kind of revived the Western for that time and proved that Western films would still make money in the theaters. And that's another reason why it makes it, because it's a great Western and a fine story. It's also just, I put it there because it's historical in nature and kind of groundbreaking for the time, because nobody thought you could make money from a Western, but evidently Clint Eastwood thought you could. And he wrote it, he directed it, he produced it, and of course he starred in it. And Pale Rider is just a fine film, and it's very well done. And Clint Eastwood, as good as anybody else, he plays these mysterious no-name characters that ride in and trouble follows, and nobody does this better than Clint Eastwood. I mean, he started in the spaghetti westerns and he continued it. He often plays a man with no name, and nobody does this better than Clint Eastwood. And that's why this film made my top 50. And it's number 45, Pale Rider. Anyway, that's my next 5 of my top 50 greatest Western films of all time. Coming in, 41 is 3:10 to Yuma from 1957, starring Van Heflin and Glenn Ford. Number 42 is Hidalgo from 2004, starring Viggo Mortensen. Number 43 is from 1970, and that is the film Chisholm, starring John Wayne and Ben Johnson. Number 44 is Shenandoah from 1965, starring Jimmy Stewart and a host of other great actors and stars from television and film. Number 45 is from 1985, starring Clint Eastwood, Pale Rider. Anyway, this is numbers 41 through 45 of my top 50 Western films of all time. Anyway, that is my 41 through 45 of the top 50 greatest Western films of all time. I thank you for stopping in. I thank you for checking this out today. I'll catch you again soon. Bye now.